on it. But I want to get into something else that's going up in the air. Chairman Jones, let's move on to the people movers types things. So let's talk about the ones that are on the ground first. We've talked to you in the past about the unmanned shuttles, like the one at the Braves Stadium that takes people from the parking lot to the game, goes around the Battery, the Cumberland Hopper at the Battery, and extremely popular. But you're also looking at flying taxis. And so I want you to talk about those a little bit. eVTOLs.
eVTOLs. Look, we're going to take traffic off of the roads. We are going to have highways in the skies. This is, for those of us that are old enough, this is George Jetson coming to life. We're going to be one of the first states, if not the first, to put them into operation by 2026. We already have 2 vertiports on design in the Northern Arc, and we're super excited because we're going to end up with a network of what I'm going to call lily pads all around the metro area and eventually all around Georgia, literally transporting people in the sky and taking them off of the roads.
I love the way you're so excited about this, and you've been talking about this for a while, and we're finally getting there. As soon as next year, in 2026.
100%. We absolutely expect it. We got the FAA guidance in terms of where we're allowed to fly them, which is basically down state roads and federal highways. That gives us all that we need to know in order to connect the cities and connect the areas that we know Georgians want to visit vis-a-vis the sky versus just the road.
Okay, I said eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing. That's what that stands for.
Exactly.
So describe how this is going to work.
Well, if you could imagine, say you're in Alpharetta, Georgia, you're in Roswell, Georgia, there's a parking garage that conveniently is going to possibly be completely retrofitted to be a landing area. And we only need about 42,000 square feet for 3 different landing and takeoff areas. They are going to take off and land just like a helicopter, but they're going to fly horizontally like an airplane. So this allows us, we don't need runways, we don't need to create a bunch of different airports around, because that is not necessary. What's necessary is basically a landing pad, and each one of those vertiports is going to have enough electricity to charge the air taxi in about 10 minutes, and they'll have about 60 miles of range.
And then about 3 or 4 people, how many people will be in one of them?
4 people are going to be transported along, of course, with the pilot.
Okay.
We expect that'll be the start between 2026 to maybe 2030 to 2031. We expect by the mid-2030s, there will be 30 to 40 person eVTOLs that will allow you, basically, you could live 50, 60, 100 miles from where you work and literally be able to have certainty that you're at work in 30 minutes. We're super excited about all the opportunities that this is for people, but also for cargo.
I think the fascinating thing is we're going to be able to see them on our roadways. Like you go down 75 and you'll look up and they'll be there. And that is part of it too. That has to be their route, right? The interstates?
Yeah, right now we have to use the state roads and the federal roads as, I'll say, our guideposts. But as these mature and as the FAA gets more comfortable, as you may or may not know, in the air right now, we already have avenues for how airplanes fly, how helicopters fly. If you're moving south, you're moving north, etc. We're going to need to get that level of detail with the eVTOLs, because coming out of this in 2026, we might have 10 in the air, 20 in the air. But by 2030, we're going to have thousands in the air. So we need to make sure that those highways in the sky are just as safe or safer than what we have on the roads.
It really does sound like the Jeffersons. I'm sorry, the Jetsons. The Jetsons. When it comes to that kind of stuff. So they'll be all over the place. So right now, this is putting Georgia in a good, your legislation puts Georgia in a good place when it comes to this. Explain exactly what the legislation does.
So the legislation is probably some of the shortest legislation I've ever done in terms of line numbers. But what it does is it officially puts vertiports into our statute. And what that does is that allows 2 important things to occur. 1, they can operate, which of course we need to do that in order to have the landings and the takeoff. And 2, it allows us to draw down on federal money to be able to fund the vertiports at about 90% of what the costs are. So that's super important. And that also shows that the federal government understands the importance of us having a mixed modality, maybe the autonomous vehicles or maybe the air taxis, in terms of mixing with what we're seeing already on the roads.
Let's talk safety real quick, because people are going to wonder about these flying all over the place. So how do we know that they're going to be safe?
Well, first and foremost, we have redundant systems are required inside of the air taxis, minimum of 6. One that's being developed here in Covington, Georgia, Georgia actually has 7 redundant systems. On top of that, it has a parachute for the actual eVTOL. So if God forbid there is a tragic situation, the parachute will deploy, and knock on wood, what we'll see is the eVTOL coming down at about 15 miles per hour into the ground. So those are the type of things that we're looking at in terms of what safety is going to be and how important safety is, and having the redundancy, having the parachute. And then on top of that, the air taxis that will deploy in 2026 have pilots. And wait for this, by 2030, 2031, they'll all be autonomous.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot. I know you're listening to all of this. What are your thoughts?
I'm excited about the future.
Yeah?
And
Yeah.
getting in one of these drones one day and flying up there.
You'd be okay about it. I think I'd have to watch it a little bit before I do that. We'll see. The first one will be, the first Veraports will be in
We believe in Roswell
and Alpharetta.
And
Okay.
we'd love to be able to have more operational by the World Cup in 2026.
Wow.
Yeah.
Vertiports. We're going to
Vertiports.
have to learn a whole new language.
All new language,
for all of
but
this.
it's going to be fun. And
Okay.
I know how excited you are. We're going to get you on that first test flight.
Okay, we'll see how that happens. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Donna.
For all you guys are doing, and we'll keep up with the bills in a whole bit. But that does it for Lawmakers for today.